So, like, homeschooling is supposed to be fun, right? But what happens when your child doesn't want to learn? That's what I'm going to talk about today. This has been requested several times from a few of you on Instagram, and I'm finally addressing it and chatting about what I try and do and how I try and make it a little easier and better on everyone. Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. I am Christine, a homeschooling mama of 3, and my children keep interrupting me today. Hold on one moment. Sorry, I am back. I was just like talking to my husband last night about how homeschooling is getting so much easier because my toddler is getting older and it just naturally gets easier because they're not needing you so much. And then I've had a day like today where I have been interrupted by one of 3 of my children every 5 minutes, and it's been like, just breathe. They're only little for a short time. The work will get done just at a much slower pace. So, yeah, I know you get me. Like, I love my children. I love all the snuggles and the kisses and the questions and all of it. But sometimes it's just like, Anyway, let's chat about reluctant learners because I think that social media, as much as it can be a blessing as far as seeing like how other homeschool families do things and the resources available and things like that, it can do us a disservice in the sense that it can make us feel inadequate or like we're doing something wrong when we don't have the picture-perfect homeschool room and the child who's just super keen to read and learn and do all the things, okay? That's not real life. I mean, it might be for some people, but the reality is my house right now is a mess. Like, you can see like this much of my current living. There's stuff all over the floor around me. There are puzzle pieces in the playroom over there. My dining room table still has stuff left over on it from lunchtime, and my kitchen certainly isn't tidied up and clean, okay? So this is real life. I'm not going to move the camera to show you purely because it's a pain to get it set up, so I don't want to move it. But I think if you follow me on Instagram, I hope that you know that about me, that my life involves mess. And yes, it's a beautiful mess. Sometimes it like really stresses me out and it's chaotic, but it's also just life and it's messy. And homeschooling is not like this pretty little box that we put everything in. Homeschool is living, it's life. And so how on earth do you expect to keep it all perfect when it's literally intrinsic to everything that you're doing? I mean, that's just life. And the other thing is with children, they're not always going to want to sit down and do schoolwork because they just don't. They'd rather play. I mean, it's like someone said the other day, if given the option, kids will almost always choose screens. They're always going to want to choose the TV time because it is so captivating and engaging and fun for them. They're going to want to pick that. And so there are just going to be some things in life that aren't perfect and that you have to work with. And so I want to kind of address that and just make sure that you know that if you have a child who is not like on board with learning how to read or doing math or whatever, you're not alone. There are so many of us, and homeschooling does not necessarily magically fix all those problems because the reality is at the end of the day, we're all human and we don't like doing things that make us uncomfortable. Like think about it. Do you ever procrastinate about doing chores? Of course you do. You know the job needs to get done. You know that it's going to make your environment nicer, like if you vacuum the floors or clean the toilet or whatever. You know it's good for your home. You know all those things, but you procrastinate because you don't want to do it, and it's not, learning can be, I mean, it's not the same as doing chores, obviously, but it can be the same in the sense that you're having to do something you don't really want to do because learning can be hard for little ones. It stretches your mind and you have to engage, and that can be frustrating. And I think also for some children who perhaps are perfectionists, it really exposes their flaws sometimes or their lack of knowledge in an area, and they don't like that. And as a parent, you should know that they need that because they need to see that you don't have to be perfect in order to progress. And so, yeah, that's kind of like my little TED Talk soapbox rant. Now I'm going to carry on and actually chat to you about the kinds of things that I do to help when I am met with reluctant learning. So the first thing I want to chat about is age. And I do think this is an important factor when dealing with this. For instance, my daughter is currently 4. She'll be 5 in a month. And we're doing preschool work. We've been doing preschool work with her for ages because she has asked for it. But there are some days where she'll be kind of halfway through a lesson and she'll be like, oh, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm tired. Now, if that were an older student, I would be like, take a 5-minute breather and we'll go back to it. Because she's 4, I say, that's fine, go play. It's as simple as that. So if you have a child who is under the age of 7 and is very reluctant or just seems frustrated all the time with learning, I would say just take a step back, because it is actually very developmentally normal for them to not be capable of actually sitting and paying focused attention to a lot of schoolwork at that age. So that would be my suggestion. Take a step back. In saying that, my son is 6.5, and there are certain things where he will, like reading every day, he would put it off if he wasn't told to do it. And so there are some things that you might, like, as long as you know that they're developmentally appropriate, I think it's fine to push on them. And so, yeah, that's something. So I'll talk more about that in a minute. But I think figuring out the why behind why they're reluctant is so key in being able to address it appropriately. So for instance, age can be a factor. If they're not developmentally ready to tackle something that you're putting in front of them, then that is something that you can easily deal with. You just don't put it in front of them because they're not ready for it yet. My son struggles with writing. He really struggles with it. It's just, he's getting better at it, but their little hands are not great at writing for long periods yet. He's only 6 years old. And so a way that we adapt that is I'll get him to write a couple of things. And then, like, for instance, in math, he'll write a couple of the answers, a few of them. And then once I feel like he's done enough writing or he's showing signs of fatigue, I'll just get him to answer the questions verbally. Like, who cares? I know that he knows the answer. I know he knows how to write all of his numbers. He knows how to form the numbers. So why push it at this age? You know what I mean? So that certainly stops a lot of the resistance there. Another thing can be that sometimes the work's too easy for them. So bear that in mind. You can have the opposite extreme as well. And a child, if they're bored, they're probably going to be resistant to doing it as well, because they're like, this is boring. Like, why would you want to do boring school? You know what I mean? So it's funny, that balance of making sure it's age appropriate, level appropriate, does make a big difference. And sometimes kids just don't gel with certain things, and that's okay. And you just need to move on from it. It just can be a method or a style that doesn't work, and yeah, just move on from it. If you know the why behind it, it helps a lot. The second thing that I think makes a big difference is setting expectations. So I often have people ask me, how do you deal with a child who says no to doing school every day? And the answer is, well, first of all, as long as it's age appropriate, they don't get to say no to me. And this might not be popular in everybody's home, but in our home, we are the authority figures. It does not mean that I don't sit and take my children's feelings into consideration, because I most certainly do. We have open discussion a lot. But at the end of the day, if I say something has to be done, it has to be done. And if they're not going to listen to that, then there are consequences for it. But a way that I've dealt with a lot of resistance to learning is just by setting very clear expectations. And so, like, for my son, I'll be like, okay, you can go and play for half an hour, but at this time, we're sitting down and doing school. So he's got half an hour notice. He knows he can go play for half an hour. And instead of me, like, letting him go play and not telling him anything, and then, like, wanting him to come in straight away and be like, okay, now we're doing this. In his mind, he's like, oh, but he was like in the middle of a game, or, like his imagination was engaged with something else, and it's a lot harder to tear him away from that. And so I think setting clear expectations ahead of time makes a big difference for any child. I mean, it does for adults too. Like, knowing what's ahead just helps so much, and it helps with making like smoother transitions and just adapting to change and things like that. So I think have those open discussions with your children, and just ask them, like, what are they struggling with? Why don't they like a subject? My son, I've talked about this before, but he doesn't love reading, and I've asked him why before, and he said because not that it's hard, but that he doesn't feel good at it. And the reality is he is good at reading. He's actually, developmentally, he's right on where he should be. He's not advanced. He's not behind. He's like right in the middle. But it's something he has to work at. And as a perfectionist, if he doesn't get something right the first time, he will immediately say, oh, I'm not good at that. And so knowing that about him, I know that I need to give him lots of encouragement. It's really important for him to see the progress that he's made. So any way that I can track that for him is hugely helpful. So yeah, really have those conversations with your child, and don't underestimate how much they can communicate to you, even at a very young age. That it really does make a difference. So the next thing is to have a rhythm to your day. Now, I know not everybody loves to live on a schedule. I don't tend to have like a minute-by-minute schedule. We don't do subjects for a certain amount of time every day, nothing like that. But we do have a rhythm. And this does make a very big difference to my son especially. And I'm referring to him the most because he's 6. He's the one who's actually doing like proper schoolwork. My younger kids just kind of tag along. But it just helps to know that, like, from the time they wake up, we do this, and then we do this, and, you know, like, we have breakfast, and then we have chores, and after chores, you can play for a little bit while mom's getting ready for the day, and then we start school, and then we have a snack, and then we do individual subjects, and, like, there's just, like, a rhythm to our day that they are expecting. We have rest time every afternoon, and I know this works because... and this isn't specific to homeschooling, but we have our rest time every afternoon from 1 to 3. And my older kids have to be in their rooms for an hour. And then they can come out and have screen time for an hour. Or they play outside. It's up to them. They can choose between the two. But when we haven't been doing that consistently, I get like major pushback when I try and reinforce it. But then once we've done it for a couple days, they're fine. They don't even like, oh, yep, it's rest time. Well, they go and do their thing. And so I just know that having that consistency and that rhythm really, really helps. So I would suggest doing that just so your child knows what to expect. And even it was Rachel from 7 and All mentioned this in a recent video. She was talking about like secrets to homeschool success. And she was talking about bribery and how it's not actually that bad of a thing in homeschooling. And I think... she was like, maybe we shouldn't use the term bribery. And I think we could use the term incentive, because a way she talked about it was like getting the hard subject that they struggle with done first, and then they can do the one that they really enjoy. So it's like incentivizes them to get it done. Today, my son was begging me to look at toy tractors online. And I don't like him looking online a lot at things to buy because I feel like it just breeds discontentment, but he hadn't done it for a long time. And I was like, okay, that's fine. You can do that if you finish your school, like once you finish your school, and it needs to be done with a good attitude. Like I don't want whinging and whining about it. Well, I tell you, he was on his best behavior. So sometimes incentivizing them can really help as well. And then the last thing that I wanted to chat about is just being creative with how you're teaching them. I referred to like having my son just verbally tell me answers because he struggles with writing. With reading, at the moment, I've got a reading chart for him. So every book he reads to me in the evening, he gets a sticker on his chart. And once he gets up to 20 books, he's going to get a treat. And things like that. Go out of your way to try and find ways to make it more enjoyable for them, or to just ease the burden a little bit on them. And I think it really can make a big difference to their behavior and their attitude when it comes to learning. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, and I think it's something that's always ongoing and unique to each child, and something that requires a lot of open communication between you and your child. I just think that sometimes there's going to be moments where you have to step back and just take a breath. Something that I've taught my children is when they're feeling really frustrated or they can't figure something out is to just stop what they're doing, close your eyes, take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And honestly, it just calms your whole nervous system down so much. It's a technique that I was taught when I was doing my nursing training to try and stop somebody from hyperventilating, is to just start slowly breathing and try and getting them to match your breathing. And it really does work to help calm my children down. So we use that in school when my son's frustrated with something and his mind's just like starting to go into overdrive because he's frustrated. We use it for like behavior, if they're starting to get frustrated by something or they're having a meltdown over something. it can really help. So that's a tool in my parenting toolkit that has come in handy. Yeah, if you have any questions, then leave them in the comments below. I would love to chat with you about this. I think it is something that I think everyone deals with this. They may just not always be open and honest about it, but we have children who are imperfect human beings, and we are imperfect human beings teaching them. And the Lord knows I need him every single day for, helping to homeschool my children and just parent them in general. It's not easy. And when people say, oh my goodness, I would never have the patience to homeschool my children. Well, yeah, I don't either. Honestly, I don't. The Lord fills in the gaps because there are many, and the only way that you actually get more patience is by exercising in situations where you need it. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful and encouraging to you, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
What if the world had more of your smile? What if the wind could spread your love? What if your sweetness could reach everyone?